Now we'll continue where we left off, what was it? Friday, here on Inquisition Update, in the book, The Footprints of the Jesuits by R.W. Thompson. You can't understand history, and therefore you cannot understand current events unless you understand what role the Jesuits, the papacy, and the Roman Catholic Church have played in it. And R.W. Thompson recognizes this and wrote this book to help Americans determine what the Jesuit order represents, what the papacy represents, what the Roman Catholic Church represents, and what influence it has both in this country and around the world. And we've come to the solid conclusion that the so-called New World Order is simply the restoration of the Old World Order, the Middle Ages, on a global scale. Now, R.W. Thompson enumerated some of the offenses committed by the Jesuits, both against the papacy, the Roman Catholic Church, the sovereigns of Europe, the people, and God, okay, that eventually led even to their abolishment by the papacy. But the Pope simply just cannot restore his temporal power in the world, his King of Kings status in the world, without the help of the Jesuits. So despite their idolatry in China and India and elsewhere, despite their assassinations of popes, despite their offenses against the other monastic orders of the Roman Catholic Church, despite their offenses and fomentations of wars between nations that were at peace, despite all the crimes of the Jesuits, despite their suppression by Pope Clement XIV, they were reestablished simply because they are the ones most qualified, most fitted than any other body of men in the world, by habit, by education, and by training, to become the warriors in the cause of political absolutism. Political absolutism. I would add the word global political absolutism. I mean, ultimately, political absolutism results in a global sovereign ruler, King of Kings and Lord of Lords, a counterfeit kingdom of Christ. That's what the New World Order is. It's simply the reestablishment of the Old World Order on a global scale. Now, the Jesuits were obviously flattered because of their reinstatement. After the charges brought against them, after all the offenses they committed, they felt themselves the conquerors, both of Europe and of the papacy. And they now know more than anyone how important the Jesuits are to this global political absolutism. And R.W. Thompson continues in the first full paragraph on page 394. He says, "But a still more flattering cause of Jesuit satisfaction is doubtless found in the fact that Pope Leo XIII, faithful to his early impressions, that is, his Jesuit training throughout his life, has assigned to the members of the Jesuit order the special duty of becoming the educators of the young." I want my listeners to listen to this. The papacy has delegated to the Jesuit order the education of youth all over the world, and is sending the Jesuits into all countries of the world, and especially those where Protestantism prevails. You can read that to be the United States of America, and that's what R.W. Thompson's intent is, that people in this country realize that the papacy, in order to eventually overthrow our sovereign government, sent the Jesuits to this Protestant country to re-educate the youth, to knowledge more amenable to a global monarchy. This is why the schools teach globalism. Of course, they never teach that the Pope is going to be the sovereign over this global education. That might wake up the Protestants. Don't wake up the Protestants. Just put the New World Order in place, and we'll keep it a secret for now who the global sovereign is, as if nobody's smart enough to figure out who it is. And the strategy works marvelously. He says he assigned to the members of the Jesuit order, that is, that society, the Jesuit order, the special duty of becoming the educators of the young, and is sending them into all the countries of the world, and especially to where Protestantism prevails, for that particular purpose, well instructed beforehand in the obligation to maintain such a system of education as he established in Perugia. Remember, Perugia is where the Pope got full control of the education system and taught Roman Catholicism, taught the Catechism. Everything else regarding education be damned. He was going to make Perugia Roman Catholic, so that it would support the papacy and its spiritual and temporal power, and obviously to help restore the temporal power in Italy, which had rebelled against the papacy. Okay, was to maintain these Jesuits in the United States and especially other Protestant countries, were to maintain a system of education as the Pope established in Perugia, so that every mind seduced by its influence may be brought to the religious belief. That's right, you go to the public schools to obtain a particular religious belief that church and state must be so united that the state shall be subordinate to the church, that there is but one form of true religion in the world, and all else is heresy, and that no government, I don't need to tell my listeners that one true religion in the world is to be Roman Catholicism, and all else is heresy, and that no government can have the divine approval which does not recognize the Pope as possessing the sovereign power to dictate its policy, insofar as all matters touching faith, morals, and discipline are involved. Or, as R.W. Thompson repeatedly reiterated, that whatever influences the jurisdiction that he takes upon himself. No subject in life is exempt from papal interference. The Pope simply establishes his own jurisdiction as he sees fit. You can't put the Pope in a box, is what R.W. Thompson's trying to tell us. He's King of Kings and Lord of Lords. He's the voice of God on earth. You can't put him in a box. You can't say, well, Pope, you have jurisdiction over this. We'll have jurisdiction over this over here. No, the Pope doesn't allow anyone else to establish his jurisdiction or to place limits upon his jurisdiction. Now it says, evidence of this settled purpose are constantly crowding upon us. Scarcely a day passes without some fresh attack upon our system of common schools, a method of education which has the popular approval in a far greater degree than any other part of our public polity. These are called, quote-unquote, godless schools because they are not permitted by law to teach that the Roman Catholic religion is absolutely true, and all other forms of religious belief are false and heretical. Did you know that's what the Roman Catholic Church intends for our common public school system? That they will eventually, little by little, teach that the Roman Catholic Church is the only true religion and everything else is heresy. Now, if they don't come right out and say that, certainly if they can educate everybody to believe in Catholic tenets and Catholic doctrine and Catholic foreign policy and Catholic social policy and Catholic economic policy and Catholic globalism, well, they never have to mention the Pope. And that's how it works. He says it is alleged that our public school systems are the nurseries of vice and immorality. On that count, I can't disagree because they're overrun by popery. Okay? If the Bible, the authorized King James Version of the Bible, were allowed to be read and discussed and studied in the schools, then obviously morality would improve and vice would decline. But they've stripped God out of the schools, and Satan has a free hand. And much of that anti-religious sentiment in the schools today was simply a result of reaction against Roman Catholic protest early in the history of our country. They protested that the Bible should not be taught in the schools. The Pope should be taught in the schools. In other words, Christ should not be taught in the schools. Antichrist should be taught in the schools. And so we succumbed to the pressure by the Roman Catholic Church and allowed the Bible to be taken out of the schools. Now you can be expelled from school for reading the Bible or having a Christian, a Protestant prayer meeting at the school. We failed. We failed to see Satan trying to root out the truth. But not only that, we failed to see how Satan was going to take over. Now, it is alleged that they are the nurseries of vice and immorality, and that they send out young men and women into the world to propagate error and libertinism, and sow the seed of moral and social decay. Every now and then, some fanatical Roman Catholic priest, unable to keep his passions within reasonable bounds, threatens the members of his congregation with excommunication for sending their children to the public schools and allowing them to become contaminated by false teaching and association with Protestant children. The American people, consequently, are required to decide whether their system of common schools shall live or die, whether the competent and distinguished core of American teachers shall be expelled and the doors of our schoolhouses be thrown open to the Jesuits. Remember, they wanted the Jesuits to take control of the schools because Roman Catholic canon law demands that only the Roman Catholic Church has the right to teach youth. By divine law, only the Roman Catholic Church has the right to teach. And that is even more important when you realize that in the public school systems in this country, early on, at the time of so much protest by the Roman Catholic Church, it was Protestants who occupied the place of teachers in the schools. And they taught Protestant tenets, separation of church and state, that every American citizen had a duty to vote and participate in the political system to establish righteous laws for the country, for the people, and to maintain our rights, to maintain our civil rights. All of this is heresy according to Roman Catholic canon law. The only legitimate form of government according to the papacy is a monarchy subject to the Pope, and he rules as the Pope dictates. The people are not to govern. The people are not to make law. They are not divinely authorized to make their own laws. Only the Pope is divinely authorized to make law. King of kings and Lord of lords. Now, why should the Protestant part of our population remain indifferent when these insults are so impudently flung in their faces? They have deemed it wise and better for themselves, and out of a kindly deference to their assailants, to prohibit the teaching of any system of religious belief in the public schools, or to levy any tax for that object. And, in order that church and state shall remain perpetually separated, they have provided for this inhibition by constitutional provisions, both national and state constitutions. To the Jesuits, therefore, all of this is godless, and the government is godless for separating church and state. And the Protestant people are godless, rapidly hastening to inevitable ruin in this life and to fearful punishment hereafter. There ought to come a time when this controversy, forced upon the people of the United States against their will, shall cease. Our public schools are designed for training and educating American citizens, those who are to perpetuate our institutions when existing generations have passed away. And it is no special wonder that those who do not come up to the full measure of American citizenship themselves, such as Roman Catholics who maintain their first loyalty to the Pope and to their church, and desire that others shall not do so, are seeking to destroy them. R.W. Thompson is plainly telling us who is seeking to destroy our American institutions. He says, notwithstanding, they are fully protected in the right of maintaining and conducting their own private schools in their own way, without the least interference from any quarter. They have presumptuously, if not insolently, inaugurated a restless warfare upon our whole system of public education, because our common schools are nurseries of patriotism, and keep alive in the minds of our children the obligation of obedience to the Constitution and government as they are. If the system we have so long cherished were weakened materially by this malignant warfare, it would be the just cause of serious alarm. But everything occurring creates a contrary belief. By giving assurance that it continues to disseminate influences fast reaching the most remote and obscure places in the country, causing the popular heart to rejoice at the victories it has already won over ignorance and vice, and manifesting that it possesses established power sufficient to assure continued growth and complete triumph. Nevertheless, it is well and important for us all to know what Pope Leo XIII's attitude is toward our common schools, and what kind of education he proposes to establish here in preference to that which we have cherished so highly. In this way, it will be plainly seen that his first and highest objective is the extermination of Protestantism, by putting out of the power of those who obey him implicitly to become American citizens in the sense and meaning of the Constitution in the United States. Pope Leo XIII and Pope Pius IX and Pope Gregory XVI and every pope since then have had one objective for the United States of America, and that is to destroy Protestantism. Because Protestantism is where we get all of our so-called heretical institutions. Protestantism. That which nearly destroyed Roman Catholicism back in the 1500s and 1600s. R.W. Thompson's got it right. He says, nevertheless, it is well and important for us all to know what attitude Leo XIII occupies toward our common schools and what kind of education he proposes to establish here in preference to what we have cherished so highly. In this way, it will be plainly seen that his first and highest object is the extermination of Protestantism, by putting out of the power of those who obey him implicitly to become American citizens in the sense and meaning of the Constitution of the United States. He knows nothing of the nature of this citizenship or of the obligation it imposes. As a foreigner and alien, ignorant of our language, constitution, and wants, his chief object is to create here a political religious party held in unity by the desire to restore him his lost crown as a religious duty, so that when he shall have succeeded in that, he may bring us all within his spiritual jurisdiction and deal with us accordingly. That's your Inquisition. And I'll tell you something else. This political religious party that Pope Leo XIII wanted so badly, it's now in place in this country. It's called ecumenism. It's called evangelicals and Catholics together. Now they are the geopolitical juggernaut controlling the government of the United States. And together, in the name of making the United States Christian, they are making it Roman Catholic. And when Roman Catholicism becomes the state religion, all heresy is eradicated. Bible-believing Christianity, Protestantism, will find its end in this country unless God's people repent of ecumenism. We'll be right back after these messages. You're listening to Inquisition Update on FirstAmendmentRadio.com. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Record budget deficits, bankruptcies galore, and the U.S. dollar is at an all-time low. With today's gloomy economic outlook, safe investments are often hard to find. For over a decade, Melody Cedarstrom at Discount Gold and Silver Trading Company has been helping people secure their future by investing in the precious metals. Melody has the honesty, integrity, and experience that is often lacking in the precious metals business. Let her put it to work for you. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 800-375-4188. That's 800-375-4188.
The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on Internet or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the Internet. Then, when you subscribe, we will send you the last quarterly MP3 CD of that program immediately, and continue to do so with each new quarter. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe, so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening.
Visit crosstheborder.org, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.
I know you all want answers, and believe me, so do I, and I'll do my best to get them.
Despite Nicolas Cage's promise to do his best to get left behind rapture answers for us, Don't hold your breath. Not everyone believes Left Behind is true prophecy. Some may even regard as conspiratorial the mainstream re-release of the Left Behind movie with actor Nicolas Cage portraying the main character as an attempt to further reinforce in the minds of all this perception of false prophecy in order to condition the masses for the play about to begin. If you want true Bible prophecy answers, get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. The author exposes the Latin rapture origin, the 7-year tribulation deception, true Bible revelation of Daniel's 70 weeks, the abomination of desolation, the restrainer, America in the Revelation, the image of the beast and the mark of the beast, and the truth about God's chosen people, and so much more about Bible prophecy. This book will shatter the Left Behind paradigm of future events. Get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.
Welcome back from the break. You're listening to the second half hour of Inquisition Update on FirstAmendmentRadio.com. By the way, if you wish to comment, contact me, well wishes, criticisms, questions, corrections, please email me, tom@seawaves.us. That's tom@seawaves.us. tom@seawaves.us. And keep in mind to pray for First Amendment Radio and for Brother Nicholas. And if you can, ask what God would have you contribute to help replace some faulty equipment there at the station. We're listener supported. Obviously, the Roman corporate system in this country would not financially support a ministry such as this. So it's up to God's people in this country, those who love the truth, no matter how ugly it is, those who love the truth, to support the truth on the Internet. FirstAmendmentRadio.com, because you love the truth. Now, the papacy, as a foreigner and an alien to this Protestant country, ignorant of our language, ignorant of our Constitution and wants, his chief object is to create here in the United States of America, Protestant America, a political religious party held in unity by the desire to restore him, that is the papacy, his lost crown as a religious duty, so that when he shall have succeeded in that, he may bring us all within his spiritual jurisdiction and deal with us accordingly. And I add a little exclamation point right there. Now, this papacy, the biblical, historical, and prophetic Antichrist, that which should be reviled by God's people all over the world, and has been, ever since before its foundation, is a foreigner and an alien to this country. And he wishes to rebuild the Tower of Babel, and brick by brick they are rebuilding the Tower of Babel, uniting all of the people that God has separated. Destroying national boundaries, destroying national sovereignties, destroying governments of, by, and for the people, destroying constitutions that protect the rights and Protestantism of the people, constitutions that separate church and state, constitutions that give freedom of speech and freedom of press and freedom of religious belief and freedom of conscience. All of that's heresy. I mean, you can't be the modern day Nimrod if the people are allowed to tell the world what it is, the restoration of the Babylonian system called the Tower of Babel, a global monarch such as Nimrod was. The papacy doesn't care about our national sovereignty. He hates our national sovereignty. He calls it heresy. Likewise, our Constitution and mostly our Protestant beliefs, separation of church and state. The Pope is Antichrist. I mean, after all, that's the bottom line in Protestantism. If you don't believe the Pope is the Antichrist of the Bible, you can't call yourself a Protestant. You may, but you can't. Not legitimately. A nation full of Protestants that don't even know the definition of it. And because of that ignorance, which has been swept from our history books, swept from our social studies books, swept from our knowledge, has taken the advantage now, because of that ignorance, to proclaim to the world that the world is a global society now. No borders. And everybody says, well, yes, we have an international trade. We have international currencies that are constantly conflicting. We have wars, and we need to unite the whole world. Well, it sounds like a perfect solution to the world's problems, doesn't it? And, of course, we see nothing wrong with Jesuits in disguise coming into the schools and teaching this globalism, while the Pope sits in Rome and just laughs his diabolical fanny off. What advantage the papacy has because of universal ignorance in this country, biblical ignorance in this country, constitutional ignorance, ignorance about Protestantism. They've lulled us to sleep. We don't even consider the Roman Catholic Church to be an enemy in this country. As a matter of fact, we're too anxious to damn somebody that would suggest the Pope is the Antichrist, or that the Roman Catholic Church is the synagogue of Satan. That's hate speech. You can't say that in this country. We have religious freedom. You see all of the efforts that the Roman Catholics in our society have achieved in twisting the minds of American people, even while they read the Bible as a foreigner and alien, ignorant of our language, constitution, and wants. The papacy's chief objective is to create here a political religious party held in unity by the desire to restore him his lost crown, that is, his temporal crown, as a religious duty. They've literally made it a religious duty to make reparations to the Pope because of the Protestant Reformation. You see, they don't believe the Pope's the Antichrist anymore. They still call themselves Protestant, but they don't believe the Pope is the Antichrist anymore. He's some slick Willie down at the end of time. Okay, going to sign a peace treaty with the Jews? He hasn't come yet. We really don't have to worry about him because we're going to be raptured out of here before it gets really rough anyway. So, while we're here, we got to be busy doing God's work, see? We gotta restore Christianity in this country, and the Catholics are going to help us. They're Christians too, aren't they? Aren't they? Yeah, the Pope wears a funky hat, and he's kind of weird, and I know some of his priests are not too holy. But after all, it is Christianity, isn't it? Isn't it? They got a lot of money, and they got a lot of power and influence in Washington, D.C. Let's throw our hat in with them, and we'll create us a political religious party unequaled anywhere else in the country. And there won't be any political lines of division. We'll have our religio-political party right in the Democratic Party and right in the Republican Party. And we'll control the agendas of both. Because after all, this is a Christian country. We better be damn careful from here on out what we call Christianity. Mixing the holy with the profane. That's why God repeatedly punished the Jews. Ecumenism. Do you realize it was ecumenism is why God punished the Jews? It's just it's same stuff, different millennium. Won't we ever learn? It appears not. After all the example of the history of the Jews and how they offended God by their quote-unquote ecumenism, you would think there'd be enough spiritual wherewithal in this country, in this so-called Protestant country, to recognize this ecumenism as the most lethal occurrence to ever come down since the founding of this country. And we are ripe for divine judgment. And like I've said before, it may offend some people, but look, if God doesn't judge this country, doesn't judge God's people for throwing their hat in with the man of sin, the son of perdition, then he owes an apology to the Jews. There's one message on Inquisition Update that ought to resound in every ear, is that we must repent of ecumenism, and we must restore Bible-believing, King James Version Protestantism in this country, kick the Jesuits out, close down the Catholics in our government, get them out of office and replace them with Bible believers. Kick the Jesuits out of this country. Make it unanimous, finally. Every other nation in the world has done so. It's only the United States that continues to harbor this cancer, this global cancer that pits nation against nation, kingdom against kingdom, reduces the cities of the world to desolation, slaughters hundreds and hundreds of millions of people, reduces us all to poverty in paying for all these wars, destroys our moral fabric, reduces the Bible to just another GD piece of paper, as according to George W. Bush. Likewise, our Constitution pollutes our churches with futurist, phony, Jesuit-inspired exoneration of the papacy and puts the onus on somebody that nobody cares about. I'm telling you, they have so tactfully, so strategically, so thoroughly destroyed the very foundation of this country, it's a wonder it still stands. He says, as a foreigner and an alien, ignorant of our language, constitutions, and wants, his chief object is to create here a political religious party, that's ecumenism, held in unity by the desire to restore the Pope his lost crown that was taken away from him during the Protestant Reformation, and to do so as a religious duty, service to God, so that when he shall have succeeded, he may bring us all within his spiritual jurisdiction. That means us true Bible-believing Protestants into his spiritual jurisdiction and deal with us accordingly. You see, it'll, once again, be a matter of religious duty to kill those who oppose the papacy and his global system. It'll be regarded as a service to God. And the killing of a Bible-believing Christian will be known as an act of faith. Once again, an auto de fe. History is repeating itself. And it appears that there's no help for America, not as long as Americans remain ignorant of the Jesuits, the Roman Catholic Church, and their influence in history and in current events. R.W. Thompson continues, he says, this accomplished, the history of the papacy for more than 1,000 years proves that the next step would be to treat our nationality as a fiction and our boundary lines, our national borders, as merely imaginary, so that instead of our present independence, we shall be reduced to an inferior and submissive department in a vast, universal, holy Roman Empire with its crown resting upon the head of the Pope, and after him upon all the heads of his successors. the Tower of Babel. One world, one religion, one government. Out of many, one. Global ecumenism. We either come to the ecumenical table of Nimrod or Nebuchadnezzar willingly or by force. You know, any of us who have spent the time to go to YouTube or any other video source and watch the activities of the American military, those that they will reveal in video, can see the ruthlessness with which the United States annihilates its enemies. I've watched helicopter pilots in some of those videos shoot people on the ground with infrared targeted weaponry, 50 caliber machine guns, as though they were playing a video game and hooting and hollering, just having a ball. Now, mind you, 50 caliber remotely aimed weapons such as helicopters, 50 caliber machine guns, is old technology. I mean, that's just like the sticks and the clubs of yesteryear. The weapons they have today are inconceivable. Imagine the ruthlessness of the American military where they turned against us poor, defenseless, innocent, Bible-believing Christians, that all we want is Christ to be our king, and we want Antichrist out of our lives. You see, they take it as an insult when we call the Pope Antichrist. They call it hate speech. Well, they do as men do, return hate for hate. Only we are so outgunned that it won't even be sport. It'll be a massacre to rival any massacre ever in the history of the world. Now, some people are going, oh, Tom's fear-mongering again. He can't sell this just by plain rhetoric. He has to resort to fear-mongering. No. History dictates what the future holds. And I simply say to my critics, you are not aware of history. Now, the R.W. Thompson continues. He says, not very long ago, Pope Leo XIII sent to the United States an official representative in the person of Monsignor Sotoli, nominally Archbishop of Lepanto in Greece. Now, I could go on about Lepanto right now, but I won't. Oh, I can't help it. Lepanto in Greece was a scene of victory for the Roman Catholic Church over the Turks. It was a massacre. It was a slaughter. It was a crusade against the Mohammedans, the Turks. It was one major victory for the Roman Catholic Church. There was another great victory against another heretical sect called the Calvinists of France, the French Huguenots, and they likewise were slaughtered in Paris. We've all talked about it here on Inquisition Update repeatedly. The St. Bartholomew's Day Massacre. There's something Lepanto and St. Bartholomew's Day Massacre in Paris have in common. Something that they have uniquely in common. Not just that they were crusades against quote-unquote heretical sects like the Turks and the Protestants. But those two massacres are commonly celebrated in the Roman Catholic Church and commemorated on September 11th of each year. Just go to Wikipedia and see for yourself. September 11th. Or just simply Google St. Bartholomew's Day Massacre and look down, scroll down, and you'll see a mural a dual mural, one left side depicting the massacre at Lepanto, and another, the massacre of the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre in France. They're painted side by side. They're commemorated on the same day, September 11th of each year in the Roman Catholic Church. Coincidence? Well, my critics will say Tom's stretching again, but I assert to you that September 11th was held in memoriam in this country, and yet a third heretical sect was destroyed and commemorated on September 11th. A whole nation this time. Anyway, this Monsignor Seeger, Satoli, that was sent to this country to represent the Pope, is called a delegate. But in view of the fact that he fully represents the Pope as his other self, and that his powers are so complete and plenary that no appeal can be taken from his decisions, it is more appropriate to call him a vice pope. Okay? The Pope simply put his mitre on this man's head and sent him to the United States of America to represent him. Gave him full plenary power. It says, he is said to be a learned and discreet man, and it is doubtless true that he deserves all the compliments otherwise bestowed upon him. He had not, however, been long in this country before he found that there were divisions of sentiment among the Roman Catholics with reference to our common schools, some sending their children to them, notwithstanding the instructions of their priests not to do so, and others refusing because they considered them quote-unquote godless schools, that is, infidel. This devolved upon him the duty and necessity of deciding a question which had hitherto baffled the most ingenious minds, a question made more difficult by the fact that it involved either the approval or disapproval of well-established and popular measures of public polity. His decision is entitled to consideration and should be carefully scrutinized, inasmuch as it is claimed that for it that it is the final solution of a great and puzzling problem. The statement of it which follows is taken substantially from that made by himself to the archbishops at a meeting held for them in New York. He claims for quote, the Roman Catholic Church, unquote, both, quote, the duty and divine right, unquote, of teaching religion to, quote, all nations, unquote, and of, quote, instructing the young, unquote. That is, quote, she holds for herself the right of teaching the truths of faith and law of morals, in order to bring up youth in the habits of the Christian life, unquote. So this is simply a reiteration of Roman Catholic canon law that the church is the sole teacher in the world. It says, nevertheless, quote, there is no repugnance in their learning the first elements or the higher branches of the arts and natural sciences in public schools controlled by the state, unquote, which protects them in their persons and property. All right? The church is supposed to be in control of education. But the church can't have her way right now, so it's okay for the Roman Catholics to go to the public schools so long as they're only taught the first elements of education, reading, writing, arithmetic, right? And the sciences, and the arts, and ways to make a living. But they're not to be told that the Pope is the Antichrist. They're not to be told about the Battle of Lepanto. They're not to be told about the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre. They're not to be told about the gunpowder plot. They're not to be told about the Protestant Reformation and Revelation chapter 17, which clearly defines the papacy and the Roman Catholic Church as a woman seated upon a bloody beast that makes war against the saints and makes war against the Lamb of God and is eventually overcome by the Lamb of God. We're not supposed to talk about that in schools. That's why we have to destroy the public schools. That's why we have to replace them with Roman Catholic schools, the parochial school system. That's what Monsignor Sotoli was sent to this country to do, to represent the Pope in his attack against the Protestant public school system of this country, to make them Catholic so that eventually they could make the whole country Catholic and then use the country as a papal proxy warrior to restore the temporal crown of the Pope upon every nation in the world. That's the United States today, the Pope's temporal power proxy warrior, conquering the world for the Pope. Their plan was strategically implemented, and it's almost perfect. Not even a protest. We'll see it tomorrow.
Visit crosstheborder.org, C-R-O-S-S, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.
I know you all want answers, and believe me, so do I, and I'll do my best to get them.
Despite Nicolas Cage's promise to do his best to get left behind rapture answers for us, don't hold your breath. Not everyone believes Left Behind is true prophecy. Some may even regard as conspiratorial the mainstream re-release of the Left Behind movie, with actor Nicolas Cage portraying the main character, as an attempt to further reinforce in the minds of all this perception of false prophecy. In order to condition the masses for the play about to begin. If you want true Bible prophecy answers, get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. The author exposes the Latin rapture origin, the 7-year tribulation deception, true Bible revelation of Daniel's 70 weeks, the abomination of desolation, the restrainer, America in the Revelation, the image of the beast and the mark of the beast, and the truth about God's chosen people, and so much more about Bible prophecy. This book will shatter the left-behind paradigm of future events. Get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.